Let's get into the world of AI and the chips economy now with a special guest who is on the set with us this morning. Pat Gelsinger, former Intel CEO. He's now general partner at venture capital firm Playground Global. And if there's one person who knows what's going on around this whole space and around what happened at Intel, what's going on with Intel now, it is you. I'm just so curious where you land on what's transpired here, specifically before we even get into just everything else. This idea that the U.S. government is now a major shareholder in Intel.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, Becky, Joe. Just great to be on the show and see you all again. And, is the stake that the U.S. government has taken in Intel, is it good or bad? Right? And to me, the only metric that matters is, does it cause the building and filling of Intel fabs? And if it causes more fabs to be built, more fabs to be filled in the U.S., then it's good. If that doesn't occur, then it's not, right? It's a question of, policy at that point. And obviously the market responded a little bit positively to it when it was announced. We've seen some other equity come into Intel, but none of those have yet included a commitment to fill the Intel fabs. And obviously this was a good week for Intel. Right. With 18A coming across the line. I put a lot of sweat equity, deeply appreciative of the team making that happen. But the metric is build and fill fabs.
But I want to go back in time, if you will. So Gina Raimondo comes to you and says, we're thinking about doing this CHIPS Act thing. You wanted a piece of the action. And at the time, it was a grant. It was just, we're going to hand you the money under the sort of guise that this would be good for national security and resilience in the country. And that would be the benefit to the country, to the nation, not necessarily that there was also an economic component that would come straight back to taxpayers in the sort of direct way. If she had said to you, hey, Pat, we'd like to give you some money, but you're going to have to give us a little bit of equity for this, you would have said what?
Well, first, that's not how it played out, right? Remember, the CHIPS Act began under Trump 1. So it was a long process, bipartisan act being passed as a grant program. And obviously, Intel was a beneficiary. I was super disappointed, that the GINA and Department of Commerce took so long to get the money deployed, so long to get it across the line to help Intel at that point. But if the trade was, hey, we wanted to invest and we were going to drive the industry to build and fill fabs, I would say the same thing. That's a good deal if it drives the industry to build and fill fabs. We have to reshore supply chains for leading-edge R&D and technology.
But Howard Lutnick has basically said this was a lousy deal for the American taxpayer, and that basically the money that was already given has effectively been squandered, and that if we're going to keep giving this kind of money away, that we should have a piece of the action.
Well, I think this administration has clearly said, hey, when they see things that aren't okay, they're ready to blow them up and reconceive them. And I think that's what you saw.
Do you believe that they're not okay then? I believe this was under your leadership.
Had they, I was very happy that we got the bipartisan chips across the line. I was very disappointed by how the Department of Commerce under GINA executed it, and the length that it took to get that money into place, 2.5 years, critical years, nothing happened. So I was quite disappointed. And for them to come in and say, that was broken, we're going to fix it in a very different way. Hey, we need to build and fill fabs.
Hey, Pat, if you looked at Intel shares for the last year, they're up by 54%. But if you look over 5 years, they're still down more than 33%. What happened besides the Biden administration taking too long? NVIDIA has taken over the world. NVIDIA's even now investing.
Think of AMD, because that was your perennial rival, was AMD. I never thought it would be.
Over that period of time. But just explain the bigger, broader picture.
Yeah, clearly, two things happen. One is, it's a long, heavy, and expensive. And I said it was 5+ years to rebuild, the technology base for Intel. We haven't even gotten there yet. 18A last week, an important milestone to that end. And then the shift of the industry to AI. And those were the two big factors that led to this being the case.
Did Intel miss it? When did Intel take its eye off the ball in terms of looking towards AI? How do you kind of go back and just break down what happened?
It was a long journey. right? Intel made a set of bad decisions over 15 years. You know, this was the rebuilding of Intel, lost technical leadership, wasn't led by technologists. for many years, and rebuilding, core technology, manufacturing, supply chains, process technology. And yeah, we were late on AI as well, but this was way long decisions that were made, that put it in a difficult position. And, to the leadership of Intel today, great milestone last week, and I wish nothing but the best. This is seminally important for the nation. We need leading R&D. We need leading manufacture at scale in the U.S. for our supply chains.
So now that we're in this position, do you look at what's happening? I mean, sort of the other large question out there is, are we in some kind of AI boom, but also some would think about it in the context of it a bubble? There's a lot of leverage in the system. There's a lot of cash, but then there's a whole bunch of other folks who are trying to build these data centers, and whether there's the energy component side of it, or whether you think about the real estate component. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things happening at one time.
Yeah, and are we in an AI bubble? Of course, right? We were in an internet bubble. Of course we are. I mean, we're hyped, we're accelerating, we're putting enormous leverage into the system. That said, I don't see it ending for several years. I do think we have, an industry shift to AI, as Jensen has talked about, and I agree with this, that businesses are yet to really start materially benefiting from it. We're displacing all of the internet and the service provider industries as we think about it today. We have a long way to go.
What's the sign that would be too much for you?
Well, and what's the risk of it being too much, which I want to come back to as well. Okay. To me, there's a set of technologies on the horizon, some of which we're driving, like our snowcap, where we're promising to be 100x better in power performance. Meaning a gigawatt data center, I can do it in 10 megawatts and deliver the same AI performance. And not just snowcap, but a whole range of disruptive technologies. And I think they start materializing in the latter part of the decade.
Okay.
So, I do think in that sense, nothing is changing this path for several years. That said, it will change. These are radical improvements in AI efficiency that occur this year.